And we are back. One more lesson for our course, how to build a web application that's like Twitter using HTML, CSS, JavaScript, Node.js, MySQL. Let's keep going. So we spent some time working on the style, and that's just fine. Let's take a break from the style right now, and let's work on more of interactive stuff. That is, okay, we can write something here, but clicking write doesn't do anything. I don't see any new entry. But when you type something here, click write, what should happen is a new entry should be added to this list of entries. How do we do that? Well, we're gonna need JavaScript. JavaScript is a programming language, originally a scripting language for the browser to make web pages interactive. We're gonna make this interactive, and that's pretty much when a website becomes an actual web application because of the interaction with the user. So how can we do that? Well, we're gonna do stuff in HTML. We are going to create an element in memory, and we're gonna apply a class to that element. A new element will have the class entry, and we need to set the text, the content of that element, and we're gonna use JavaScript to do that. Be very nice. We're gonna learn about events, because when you click the button, that's a click event. We need to know how to handle the event so we can do something in response to that click event. Well, we're gonna first take the text, create a new entry, inject that new entry to the list, and after that we're gonna clear this text box, right? Because you already typed something, you don't want anything else to be here. How are we gonna do that? Well, let's get started. Going back to the text editor, I'm gonna create a new file called script.js. .js is the extension for JavaScript. Now we're gonna be programming JavaScript. Nice. I'm gonna make a script here. Now, let's first write the script, and then we're gonna link it to the HTML file using the script tag. Now for the script, we need to do the following. Well, the user is gonna type something here, and then it's gonna click write. Well, the button click is an event. We're gonna need to handle that event. One way of handling the event is using add event listener. Now we're gonna target what's called the document object. Now this is called object. Document object, we can access, we can call a function, aka method, also known as method, on the object, called .add event listener. Well, not quite, sorry. First we need to find what we want to listen to. What element is going to trigger some event. In this case, is the button. Now, the button is this button right. How can we somehow tell it, hey, for this button, the right button, whenever you click it, I want you to do something. So I'm going to add an event listener to that button, not the document. The button that's containing the document. So I need to look for the button in the document. Well, how can we do that? One way is using get element by ID. Document or get element by ID. This method will allow you to find any element in the document object model, so-called DOM, by the ID of the element. Now, the right button does not have an ID, so you have to add an ID attribute to that element or tag. So we're gonna open parentheses. I'm gonna use double quotes here. Could be single quotes, doesn't matter in our case. So double quotes. I'm gonna give that right button some sort of ID. I'm gonna call it, let's see, something Let's see, entry submit button. I like to name my IDs in that very same fashion as the style sheet classes. I use lowercase letters separate, words separated by a dash. Okay, so this is gonna look for the element that has the ID entry submit button in the document. The Doctor object model is this thing you see here if I go to the browser under the element tab. Okay. Now it's gonna look, okay, where's the element that has the ID? Well, right now, the button does not have an ID attribute. So let's do following. Going back to index.html, we have the button right here on line 12. Well, we have to add an attribute called ID to the button. So add an attribute called ID, whose value is, remember the value comes after the equal sign under double quotes. That very name that I wrote, entry, what did I call it? Did I call submit button? Yeah, entry-submit-button. Now this button now has an identifier, right? ID. So we can use document get element by ID to find this element. Now let me show you something. Once it finds the element, I'm gonna put it in a variable. Okay, I'm gonna use const to declare a variable. Like this. Let me explain what happened here. So document get element ID. I like to put a semicolon at the end, but you don't have to. But it's usually a standard style for many developers. So I'm gonna try to grab the element by ID. Let's assume it's there. It exists, okay? There are cases where it might not be exist, and they have to do some checks and other stuff. But let's assume it's already in the DOM. Suppose it grabs that element, the button. I want to hold on to that reference, to that hook. And the way I can do that is by assigning this to a variable. This is the name of the variable. I put submit button. And to make a variable, I use the const keyword. I use const because I don't need to redefine it later. So I can only define it once and I don't need to redefine it later. Notice how I name my variable. I use what's called the camel case. Camel case means the very first letter is lowercase, and every following word, the first letter is capitalized. You can see there's two words, submit and button. The following word has the first letter capitalized all together. So if you want to type a camel case, it would be like this. Okay. That's a different naming convention. So you have camel case here for the variable name. I have the snake case for the ID, snake case for the variable, the class name. Except I haven't used it because I only use one word. Anyway, back to this. Well, that's very nice and all. Now to the submit button, I want to add event listener. This means whenever you click, that's the first argument to this function call. I want it to do something. And that's something, let's add here. It has an argument, parameter called event. Want to do something. Let's do what's called the console.log. Right button was clicked. We're gonna see what this does. Let's just write it and see. Let's keep at this for now. We're gonna learn what it does soon. Back to index.html, we'll have to find a way to connect script.js to the index.html file. Usually we place all these connections right before the end of body. So for scripts, JavaScript, we usually put the script right before the end of body. Of course, you can write JavaScript in the same file as the HTML, but that's not typical best practice. in most cases or many cases, you're gonna have a separate file for JavaScript. And to make the link, you're gonna have put usually before the end of body to make sure that everything before that has been defined, and there won't be any problems when by the time you execute your script that things will not be in the page yet. Anyway, so for the style sheet we use the link tag, but for the script we simply put script. Okay, script tag. We have a script. /script. Now script has a source. I don't know why the whole thing changed colors. That's really weird. What did I do? That is strange. Anyway, we have the script tag attribute src, and the value is going to be the name of the file that I created for the script, script.js. So script.js here is what goes, the location of that is what goes under the src attribute. Now let's save it here. Okay, so I went to the tab called console and I clicked the button and I got this message, right button was clicked. So let's look at the code here. So document.getElementID will grab the right button, put in a variable so I can reference later. So I'm adding event listener. So I call this method on the object that corresponds to this button, right button. For the event called click, that's the first argument to this function call. So what I'm doing here is I call this function called event listener. The function takes arguments separated by comma. The space is just for style. This first argument is the name of the event I want to listen to, click. And the second one is an anonymous function. Anonymous function you can declare with this arrow notation here with a parameter comma separated on the left and the braces to define the body of the function. The body of the function execute whatever I want. In this case, I only have one line, one statement. The statement is what writes, but right button was clicked to the screen. And that's done through the log function of the console object. Note I talk about objects because JavaScript, there's a lot of objects. Objects are like things that have attributes and have behavior. Behavior is like something you can ask it to do for you. In this case, I can ask the console object, please log something to the console there. And I can ask the submit button, please, I'm gonna add an event listener so I can listen to you. And here's what I want you to do in this anonymous function every time you click. And that's precisely what it did. It said right button was clicked when I clicked the button. It only happens when I click the button. Of course, if I click, it will keep writing more. Because the way my browser detects that the same thing was typed, it just adds a counter here saying, hey, this was printed 5 times. So it's actually 1 per line, but that's what the browser does to compact things. Okay, and that was it. We wrote our first script, JavaScript. Wrote the script, back to the index.html. Make sure to link that we're using the script tag src, location of the file with the script. Usually at the end, before the end of the body, is where we place the JavaScript. With that, I'll see you in the next lesson.